Welcome to Her Expat Life, the YouTube channel that brings you all the relevant content you need to advance your global lifestyle as a female entrepreneur and expat. Today, we have a very exciting guest who's going to be speaking to us, someone who I hold near and dear and who inspires me personally, and I'm sure will inspire you as well. Her name is Candace Smith, and she is the powerhouse and the force behind Her Expat Life. And today we sit down and talk with her about her life, her journey, and her vision for her expat life. So, Candace, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to speak to you.
Thank you so much, Alexia, for having me. I am so excited for this conversation. It has been a long time coming, so I am ready.
Let's dive into it. Okay, so for those who don't really know that much about Her Expat Life, give us a quick overview. Like, what is Her Expat Life and what were you hoping to create when you started?
Wow. So, Her Expat Life, I think I have to kind of go back a little bit to kind of share the backstory behind Her Expat Life. When I started Her Expat Life, it really was a culmination of a lot of different experiences as a woman who had been traveling abroad. I am a divorced mother, and I had been traveling actually most of my life before it was popular, before Instagram, before smartphones, before all of those things. But I started traveling with my daughter, when we moved to Puerto Rico, and we did our first transatlantic trip to Paris. I realized at that time when I was in Paris that was something I really wanted to do. I was like, okay, this is a lifestyle that I knew existed somewhere, but I didn't know it existed. And I was like, okay, these are my spirit people over here. Drinking wine at 3:00 in the afternoon. I was like, this is amazing. An American person would never do that. They're too busy working. So, after I had that first transatlantic experience traveling to Paris, I decided, okay, living abroad is something that I would like to entertain at least half of the year. And so I came to Spain, first to Madrid and then Barcelona. And I was like, okay, wow, this is really amazing. I loved it as well. And I actually started putting in the paperwork with an immigration attorney in Spain to get my non-lucrative visa in Spain. And just so happened after I came back from Spain, we had stayed in Spain for, I want to say, like 2 months. And came back, had a a short break. It was like a 3-week break. And then I was back on a plane to Rome because another friend of mine wanted to take her first transatlantic trip. And honestly, Italy was not even on my radar at all. Italy was not on my radar. I was like, okay, I guess we'll go to Italy, because I just had no idea. I'm like, I guess we'll go to Rome. And so we get to Rome, we touch down, and I want to say 2 or 3 days into my trip, I turned to her and I said, I'm moving here. And she's like, are you serious? I was like, I'm dead serious. And I want to say over the course of like 8 weeks, I had found the student visas that my daughter and I were going to obtain to stay in the country legally. I had an apartment. I had our return plane tickets. I had my codice fiscale, which is like your Italian tax ID number, all the paperwork that we needed to go back. And I told my sister, my family, which thank God they were very supportive. Hey, guess what? I'm moving to Italy, by the way. Just wanted to let you all know. And of course they were shocked, but again, they were very supportive. And 8 weeks later, I found myself in Rome and on this fabulous journey that honestly was one of the best times of my life. Like, if I can look over the course of my life and say, okay, what have been like the highlight moments of my life, it was definitely living in Rome during that time. Just very beautiful. And then what was it, February, I want to say February, end of February 2020, I decided to um, take a solo trip to Istanbul, Turkey. My mom had come to Rome to get my daughter and take her back to the States for some grandma time. And I was like, this is my opportunity to, really feel like young, free, independent. And I decided to go to Istanbul, Turkey. And I want to say 3 days or so into my trip, I received a text message from the Turkish government saying all flights to and from Italy have been canceled due to COVID. And I was like, oh my God. Because of course when I left Rome, life was normal. Like it was normal life. And I was like, oh my God, what's going on? And instead of feeling panicked, I just said, you know what, I'm just gonna go with the flow. Um, and I want to say a few days after that, that's when Italy underwent the first full lockdown. And I was like, okay, well, it looks like I'm going to be in Turkey for an undetermined amount of time. Um, I started getting, trying to explore the city. There were a lot of things that kind of deeply resonated with me as far as, the culture and things like that. I think, a lot of people who know me, they know that at one point in time in my life, I practiced Islam. I'm very global. So I have friends from all walks of life, all over the planet, different religions. And something about Istanbul, like I said, just deeply resonated with me. And then just being in that situation of, COVID and just not knowing what was going on in the world, I just started really understanding how I, in this moment, needed to maximize my global potential and I needed to move. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know I need to make some serious moves right now so that I'm not stuck in an unfavorable situation or position. And so crunching the numbers, I was like making the math and adding all the numbers. I said, okay, this is what my savings is looking like. This is what my income is at, like at this point in time. And I really feel like I could better leverage my US dollars living here in Turkey during these uncertain times than to try to make it back to Italy and try to make it work when I don't know what's going on. And they had like a very strict lockdown. Like my neighbors were communicating with me and they were like, you're not even allowed to leave your block. And I was like, oh my God. Yeah, it was very, very strict. So I was like, I'm going to stay here. Turkey, we didn't go into a lockdown until I want to say the end of March. So I had almost a month to really kind of make decisions. And I decided, I was like, wow, I think I'm going to stay here. I was like, I think this is my home hub and my forever spot. And I bought property that year. And yeah, I bought property because I realized instead of taking my savings and and using it to maintain a student visa in Italy, it would be much wiser to take advantage of the law that they had then, which is any foreigner, and that is in Turkey, the law in Turkey is that any foreigner in Turkey who purchases a property of any amount can have property ownership visa. And not only any amount.
Any amount.
The law has since changed, but the law changed, I want to say, last year. But but at that time, a foreigner could buy property of any amount and obtain residency. So, and then not only that, I can add up to 2 people on my title deed. And so I chose to add my mom and my daughter. So the 3 of us had residency. We didn't have to worry about our visas, how we were going to legally stay in the country. And then on top of that, we had a place that we could stay, a roof over our heads that we weren't paying rent for. So making all those moves and being in that difficult situation, and then also seeing what was going on, the conversations that were being had in the expat and digital nomad world amongst women, it really let me realize, or made me realize rather, how vulnerable a lot of women are and feel living a global lifestyle. A lot of women are not prepared for major shifts like something like COVID or, or any life change or sudden change. And just going on YouTube and seeing the resources that were available, there just weren't really a lot of resources I felt that had the woman in mind, the way women think in regards to the
Mm.
things that we need when we are living, loving, and traveling abroad and planning out our lives. And so Her Expat Life was really born from that place to serve women of, women in the expat and digital nomad communities, to help them to maximize and advance their global lifestyle, to get conversations going so that more of us are talking in the terms of making investments, planning for our retirements, maybe transitioning, knowing how to transition out of teaching, which so many women are teaching English abroad, or or maybe they're nannies or governesses or whatnot, and they need to know what those next steps are going to be, because guaranteed you're going to hit that point in life um, where you're like, okay, I just really don't know about this whole working thing for the rest of my life anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's going to
Yeah.
be. Right.
Relatable.
I don't know what it's about doing that, and you haven't really prepared for that. So Her Expat
Yeah.
Life, again, was born from the desire to serve women who are entrepreneurs, who are investors, who are, creatives, who are working professionals and want to advance their global lifestyles so that they can live a life of a global lifestyle of ease and freedom, which I think is so important for women to feel and for women to have. So that pretty much is Her Expat Life and where it was born, and created from, in a nutshell.
What an amazing story. So, out of adversity or a challenging situation, was born this idea to unite a community of females who can share experiences and can grow
Absolutely,
together.
absolutely,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
So we've touched a little bit on your journey, but can we deep dive a little bit further back? So where does Candace come from? What was her childhood like? Who was the
The
young
young
Candace?
Candace. um, so I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, in the inner
Mhm.
cities of Ohio. And anyone who knows, it's so funny because when I meet people who know where I'm from, and I say, okay, I'm from Cleveland and I'm from East 131st, they're like, okay, they know immediately that's a very rough neighborhood. It's a very rough neighborhood.
Uh-huh.
A lot of violence, a lot of a lot of drug activity. As a matter of fact, I actually grew up down the street from a very active drug house where people would
Oh.
use drugs, and I would walk past that. My mom would walk me past that house every day on the way to my bus stop to go to school. And so when I think about my childhood and my life, it was really a mix of so many, I want to say, dichotomies. It really was. It was very interesting because from as early as I can remember, I was always very curious about other people's cultures. Always. I loved
Mm-hmm.
learning languages. And when I was out and about, if I heard anybody speaking another language, immediately my ears would perk up and I would just be super curious about that person. I wanted to know everything. Like, what do you eat? Like, what do you do where your people are from? Like, I just wanted to know that. Um, I also, loved to read, and my mother would take us to the library, and so I spent so many years poring over books, and just wanting to just eat up as much knowledge as possible. And I also, my mom, even though we were raised in the inner city, my mom tried to make sure that we had a lot of experiences outside of that. So I did have a diverse group of friends. I was able to go camping and horseback riding. As a matter of fact, one of my good friends growing up, her family was we all went to church together. So that's how we ended up meeting. So at church, there was just like, we were in different circles because there were so many different groups of people who attended our church. And so one of the young women that I befriended, she would invite me over her house, and her parents were, I would probably guess, were definitely upper middle class, upper class, because they owned like 2 horses and a lot of land. And I know horses are expensive to maintain. So if you have 2 of them, you have money. So, so it would be so funny because
Yeah.
her dad would come pick me up for the weekends on his way home from work, and he would pull up in his Mercedes Benz, and of course, all the kids in my neighborhood were like, "Oh man, who is this guy picking Candace up in this Mercedes Benz?" Who knows what they thought, but it was really funny. But through her and her family, I was actually able to have so many diverse experiences that I would have never had, including like attending operas, because she just really didn't want to do anything just because she was the only child. She was like, okay, I just don't want to do these things with just my parents. So can Candace come please? So, I was invited to the opera. I was invited to family vacations. I was, we even tried one time to see if her dad would let me come to the Bahamas with them, but he was like, no.
That's where he drew the line. He was like, hold on.
I think we were like 15 or 16 at the time. She's like, let's see if my dad will let you come to the Bahamas with us. He was like, nice try, but no. She can come to Florida or some other, vacation with us. Yeah. But, I think my experience in life growing up a honestly rather shy and timid young woman in the inner cities, and having these diverse experiences really shaped who I am today, as far as being able to see the beauty in everybody, being able to see the beauty in diverse cultures, being open-minded and open-hearted enough to learn about other people and hear their stories. And honestly, never in a million years, if you would have asked me back then, do you ever think, when you get older, you'll be living outside the United States in Istanbul, Turkey? Like, no way. Like, that was just never something on my radar. And actually, when I was in Rome, I had a picture of myself at this fabulous party. It was a really beautiful party. And I had that thought, like, oh my God, like, look, I'm here. I'm in Rome, just thinking about my life's journey. And I made a post, in the picture of the house that I grew up in, which was like this one, it was like this 2-story duplex, which at one point, all of my family kind of lived in that house at one point in time. There were a lot of us in that house at one point in time. And I had a picture of that house in the neighborhood, and I put the picture of me standing at that fabulous party in Rome. And I said, as like, never in my wildest dreams would someone from my economic, socioeconomic background dare to dream that I would be here. And it was really amazing, and it made me realize, like, I had come full circle. And not only that, I think what it made me realize the most is that you can create a life of beauty and magic if you really want to. That really was what was hitting home with me at that moment when I was looking at that picture. It's like, you can create a life of beauty and magic if you really want to. I think sometimes in life we get so, we feel limited, or we feel stuck in our circumstances. But I truly believe that when you step into your purpose, and I think you and I had touched on that before, but when you step into your purpose as a woman, or just as a person in general, the universe opens up opportunities for you. It really will. It's really magical the way that it happens. And it has happened each and every time that I have stayed true to my heart and that I have stayed true to my purpose. And, kind of diving into that journey into my purpose, I was, during that time when I was growing up, I did suffer a lot of depression. I was suicidal.
Yeah.
I had very low self esteem. I had people in my life who just made me feel so ugly. Um,
Mm.
and I believed all of those things. I internalized all of those things. And I
Mm.
remember when I started to make that shift, and I was doing like a lot of soul work and therapy in my early 20s. And I think for me, it was just one of those situations where I was like, this cannot be everyday life for me. And I was really, really asking, what is, what is my purpose? Asking to the universe what to reveal my purpose to me. And I realized my purpose was truly um, just helping women to feel beautiful on the inside and out. That was just such a calling. And that kind of manifested into becoming a beauty professional, which is something I always loved. I loved makeup, I loved hair, I loved skincare. And so I went to school and got my esthetician's license, became a medical esthetician, and eventually opened my own salon. And actually, built my salon to six figures, where we were making six figures, and that was an amazing journey in and of itself to get there. But in all of that, it helped me to realize what my purpose was and how, if you stay on your purpose, the universe will open up for you and all these opportunities will come your way. So it's very, very important to understand your purpose, and then not only understand your purpose but act on your purpose, because it's that action
Mm.
that the universe is waiting for, so that it can open up all of these opportunities for you. And like I said, you can create a life of magic. Like what you see before you now, the way your life might seem now, it doesn't have to always be that way. And I think so many of us get stuck in the emotions of the now and thinking
Mm.
it's never going to change. And I always say, I say this to my daughter all the time. I was like, nothing stays the same. Nothing. Nothing
So
stays the
true.
same.
So true.
So if nothing stays the same, that means that
Yeah.
something good can happen, right? So just allow that good to
Mm.
happen. Allow that good to happen and create a
Mm-hmm.
life of magic and beauty.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. I like that. Nothing stays the same. It's true. It's true. And it could be a pessimistic perspective, but it could absolutely be an optimistic perspective of, if things are going to change, maybe I can mold the
Absolutely.
change, or guide the change, or take the change in the direction I'd like it to go into.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if you could tell younger Candace, Candace in her teens, Candace who, if you could just go back in time, what would you tell her? What advice would you give her, or what would you say to
I
her?
think, first of all, I would give younger Candace a big hug and I would tell her, you are enough. You are enough.
Mm.
Because for so long in life, I felt like I was not enough, that I had to do something to be worthy of love, to be something to be worthy of love or worthy of good, to to do anything except for just be who I was. And I found myself along my journey always shape shifting and molding myself to someone else's, you
Mm.
know, idea of who
Idea.
I should be and who I should show up to. Or I found myself in a position where I was buying friends or being used or over giving in the name of just someone saying, you're good enough to be loved. And then I had
Mm.
to come to the place where I just say, you know what? I am good enough. So if I could go back, I would just reassure younger candidates that you are beautiful, you are here for a purpose, and that you're good enough. You're worthy. You're worthy.
Mm-hmm. 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 I think a lot of people struggle with that, and especially when, as a female, when you're
Absolutely.
younger, it's coming into yourself and finding out who you are and being secure without needing the external validation. I think that's a real game
Absolutely. And
changer.
I think, it's one of those things where I mean, a lot of it, especially when you're younger, a lot of it does have to do with your family dynamics and who you're around because your family does,
Mm.
I mean, you get the first sense of yourself and your self esteem from your family. That's normal. And that's the way it's supposed to be. Unfortunately, unfortunately, some of us are born into families that don't understand the assignment. They don't understand the assignment. And and then next thing you know, you have to do therapy through your 20s. And that's just the way it is. But,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
think a lot of it, on top of that, you also have your hormonal issues. Um, that are happening at a rapid pace when you're a teen, and that also plays a role in the depression and in and just being in that stage of life where you want to feel accepted and you want to feel a certain amount of love and appreciation even from your own peer group, which I never really did. But then when I look back, I realized I was just so different from everybody in my peer group. Really, like the
Mm.
things that I was thinking about, the things that I was um, wanting to do with my life, they were really out of the box, especially for my community. It was just really out of the box. People from my community didn't do those things. And so, I was, my mother even said that. She's like, Candace, you were always different. You were always different. You just liked different things. And I just had to learn to be okay with
Mm.
that. But I mean, to be honest with you, Alexi, I think I just got used to that probably over the course
Yeah.
of the past 5 years that I've lived outside the United States. I finally got used to that. Like, you're different. You like to live a different lifestyle. It's okay. Um,
Hmm.
and just reconcile that not everybody's going to understand that and they don't have to. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't make everybody happy, and you shouldn't want to
You
as
can't
well.
make everybody happy. There are just far too many people on this planet to even begin to try to do that.
Exactly, exactly. So we've touched a little bit on the different roles and jobs that you've had. So you started off working in corporate, and then you became an
Yes.
entrepreneur. So so we've touched on the different roles that you've had in your life. So you started off in corporate, and then you became an entrepreneur, and then you moved on to become an entrepreneur in a global
Yes.
perspective. And other than that, you are also a
Yes.
published author. So can we talk a little bit about your books and writing and your journey in writing and yeah, just tell us a little bit
Sure.
about that.
I've always been a writer. I started keeping journals and started writing when I was about 5 or 6 years old, and I actually still have some of those journals and writings from those earlier years. And there's just always been something wonderful for me about just picking up a pen and paper and just creating and writing things. Um, my first book that I published was called, this was back in, I want to say 2015 or 2016, was A Black Girl's Guide to Being Blissfully Feminine. And that book was really centered around women from my culture, um, which is Afro American culture and the African diaspora, in terms of femininity and the strong Black woman persona, because I feel like um, so many Black women kind of embrace that strong Black women persona, that we're super women and we can take on the world and that we're just so strong. And I felt like that has so many negative repercussions and effects mentally, physically, socially, economically, Um, and just like I said, in every aspect of life, it just wasn't necessarily a good thing. And I wanted um, Black women in particular to feel empowered in their feminine, because on my journey, I had learned that the feminine is very powerful, and you don't have to put on a pseudo masculine persona in order to survive in the world or thrive in the world. And and that book I think deeply resonated with a lot of women, because a lot of women, would start um, writing to me and telling them how the book helped save their lives and change the course of their lives. And I was really grateful for that, that my journey um, could really help them, and that's ultimately what I wanted to do. My second book that I wrote was A Girl's Guide to Being a Lady in Waiting, and that was more or less a journey, a book chronicling the journey of my divorce and the things that I learned when I went through my divorce, and how I wanted to show up better in a relationship. And not only show up better, but learning how to properly vet men, because I realized that sometimes in just wanting a relationship, sometimes you want a relationship so bad that you just overlook a lot of red flags.
Oh, yeah.
so I went through that. I go through that in the book, as well as just the things that you can do to just show up as a better woman, whether you're in a relationship or not. And so that was the second book that I wrote, and then the third book that I wrote was is called the Black Girl's Guide to Living, Loving, and Traveling Abroad. And that book, I actually had no intent on writing that book. I was writing a completely different book at the time, which was a book actually for all women, centered around being powerful in the feminine. But I had an experience. I ran across a woman who um, who had come to Istanbul because she was engaged to a man that she had never met. She met him on the internet, and she had brought her kids over, and she was like, "I'm going to get married to this man," and I'm just sitting there like, "Oh my goodness!" And not only that, that was like the cherry on the cherry on top of everything. And I was like, "Okay, I got to write this book." But there were other conversations that had been being had amongst Black women traveling, that I realized that I needed to speak on, because one, I started traveling before social media and it was popular. So I've been traveling since I was like 18 years old. And, for me, I understand, in particular, being an Afro American woman, that my generation and the generations that are younger than me, we're among the first generations to have this immense freedom of movement, where we are doing things that our parents didn't necessarily want to do, or even knew to do, or even had the opportunity to do. Like for myself and many others that I know, all of our parents grew up in the segregated South. So my mom, she had to go to a colored bathroom, colored water fountain. And my dad too, my father was the first, him and his siblings were the first to integrate their all white school. And that was a very traumatic experience for him. Like when I would hear him talk about it, it was very traumatic for him. And he said he doesn't quite know if he had to do it again, if he would have chosen to do that, to be quite honest with you. But he was a pioneer in that way for his school district. And, traveling abroad wasn't something that people from my culture did. It just wasn't. So now that we are doing that in greater numbers, there is still that mindset, that shift that needs to be had, where you see yourself as a global citizen, and that you're not interpreting every negative experience that you have with someone of another culture as being a racist experience. Maybe that person had a bad day, because people all over the world have bad days. Maybe it's a cultural miscommunication or a cultural misunderstanding that's being had. Maybe you did something culturally off color and you just didn't know about it. Or, like I said, there are jerks all over the world. I mean, that's just the honest for God truth. And, you have to understand how to move. So I wrote that book from a place of wanting to help Black women to shift their mindsets and their perspectives, and then also give some really great advice as far as like dating abroad, the do's and the don'ts, and excuse me, and just really maximizing their global lifestyle. So those are my books, and I actually have also written a couple of transformative journals, Money, Love, Magic.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding how to transmute energy in order to attract wealth and shift your mindset um, in regards to making money, having money, attracting money. And I'm also working on another journal right now and another book as we speak. And I know you're like probably like, how do you find the time with all the things
I
to
don't know
do?
how you find the time. I
I
don't
know.
know. That's a
I
very good
know.
question. How do you find the time, Candice? Because you are super busy, but you're so productive. Like you're always doing things. How do you manage your time? How are you as successful as you are? What is
You
your
know what?
secret?
There are a couple things. One, I don't watch TV. That's a big one. For me, it's just such a waste of time. Usually I try to avoid like series and things like that. Like I just don't even get into it because I know it's gonna suck all of my time. The only time I'll do it is that I'm taking like an intentional break where I'm just like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna veg
Yeah.
out and I'll binge watch something. But typically I don't watch TV, and also, excuse me, out of as far as social media is concerned, I try not to be on there that much. I'll be on there really quickly, maybe to interact with people, answer some messages, maybe make a couple of posts. But once I make the posts, I'm not on there. And so while other people may gravitate towards, when they're bored or something, they'll gravitate towards being on the phone or watching TV. I
Yeah.
write a book. I work on my book.
As
Right.
we
I work on
should.
my book.
As we should be doing instead of the
Right.
death scroll or disconnecting
Right. So
completely.
that's, I
Yeah.
mean, really, that's what I do. And I remember when I wrote my first book, people were like, "Oh my God, how did you write a book?" And to be honest with you, when I wrote the first book, I didn't even think I really could write a book. It felt so intimidating,
Mm.
and I was looking for a ghostwriter. And then I was like, as I was like explaining to her what it is that I wanted, I was like, "Hold on, wait." I can tell my own story. I was like, this is
Yeah.
my life and my story. Like nobody's gonna be able to tell my journey the way I can. So I was like, forget it. I'll just write it myself. And I just started the process of writing my book. But like I said, the process of being productive is really all about, I think, your priorities and your values. And shut the TV off, honestly. Like that will waste so much of your life hours and being on social media too much. Like even I turn the notifications, like how they, the settings where your notifications, I don't get notifications. Because one, the notifications are there to keep you on the app. So what
Yeah.
I do is I don't have the notifications on settings on. I have them set off. And then what I do is I just um, I always have my notepad, pen, and I'll just sit there and write whenever I get a creative a feeling, and that's how I'm productive. Yeah,
I think you understand the value of your time.
absolutely.
I think that's
You
what
also
I'm
do.
hearing. Like, and a lot of us, I think, we don't really fully understand the value of our time and how there are a lot of time
Yeah,
thieves in our lives, digitally, especially,
absolutely.
that are designed understanding human psychology and understanding what gets our attention, what keeps our attention. And if we're not conscious about that, like you said, we're just drained from these energy and time thieves.
Absolutely. And a lot of it is
So
like
it's
you
very
don't
good.
realize how addicted you are to a lot of these things. Like I used to watch
Yeah.
TV all the time. And then once I realized, you want to know what made me realize it was a time thief? It's very
Yeah, please do.
watching the Kardashians. When
Ah,
they first came on, when they're reality show first came on, I was like so into reality TV because, of course, I grew up in the era where MTV Real World,
Yeah,
that was what was in, and so I used to be like
same.
really into that. And then they transitioned into a new
Yeah.
style of reality TV, and then the Kardashians were there. And I remember one time, like, they were going through some drama, and I was like, why am I watching
They do.
their life when I could actually be having my own life? That was
Yeah.
that I said that out loud, and I shut it off,
Mhm.
and from there forward, I even disconnected my cable. I was like, this is just a waste of time. There's nothing really good anyways, and I want to have more control over what it is that I'm taking in, not what someone else is telling me what I should
Mhm.
be watching whenever I flick on the TV. So that was really the moment, my epiphany, watching the Kardashians. Like, this is a waste of my life.
Mhm.
Like that.
Yeah, yeah. It's true. I think like I also remember growing up in the era of reality TV becoming a thing because before that it wasn't really a thing. And it's a crazy concept if you sit and actually consciously unravel this idea that we waste our lives by watching other people's lives. And we do it on social media now. Like everybody with an Instagram account is a reality
Right,
star in a
right.
sense. You know what I mean? It's a little bit
That is
crazy and
very
it's
true.
kind of sad because I yeah, I think if we look at someone like you who is consciously, actively trying to not get caught up in that, we could all be doing so much more with
Absolutely.
our lives if we just didn't get sucked into the abyss in a
Absolutely. I
sense.
mean, whatever it is that you want to do in life, you absolutely have to take actionable steps towards it because we all have the same amount of time in our day. And it's all about maximizing
Hmm.
it. And there's this really great book that I love um, called Do Less by Kate Northrup.
Mm.
And actually, that's one of the books that I'm having, the Her Expat Life team to listen to over the audio because she talks about how to maximize your life by doing less. Because a lot of times when we are wanting to create something really wonderful for ourselves, it can feel really daunting.
Yeah.
It can feel like almost
Yeah.
impossible. And, where do I even start? Where do I start? But I think she shows in that book ways that you can maximize your life without consuming so much of your time. And then also honoring yourself in those moments where you do need a reprieve, where you do need to rest and recharge yourself. So like I said, I totally believe in everyone's ability to create a life of magic. Um, and that includes creating a network of people uh, in your life to make it happen because we can't be successful as an island.
Hmm. Hmm. That actually takes us to my next question quite beautifully. So, you are a mentor for a lot of people. I don't know if you intentionally realize this or not, but you are. You inspire a lot of people who know you. Who inspires Candace, or who's been an inspiration in your life, or a sense of mentor or guidance in your journey?
Wow. I haven't asked that question before, and I want to say there are a few people who inspire me for different reasons. Like my mom was such an inspiration for me, especially with I think her spirituality and her level of faith. My mom just had this unshakable faith that things would always be okay, even in the middle of any storm. Like she was just unshakable and so sincere in her faith, and her ability to also be willing to help anybody that needed help. My mother was always there to help people, yeah, even perfect strangers. Um, and so I really look up to her, and um, she really inspired me with that. And I would always tell her that too. I was like, Mom, I feel like I'm able to have faith and be strong because I see you have a great deal of faith. Um, I think one of the other inspirations of my life was a woman who was a part of my life that I consider a mother figure, and we're not in touch as often as we should be. But her name is Mama Olabisi Olakolade, and
Mhm.
I really was inspired by her because for me, she is the epitome of aging gracefully. I think as women,
Mm.
we fear getting older. We feel like we're going to lose our sensuality and our juiciness and our vibrance for life. But she
Mm.
is almost 80 years old. She's vibrant. She's sexy. She's passionate about
Mm.
life. She still has a purpose about her life where she's doing things. She always has maintained eating well and being physical. I mean, she can still do a headstand. She's a yogi. Yeah, she's really amazing.
At
She's an amazing
80.
woman.
That's
Yeah,
incredible.
she's really amazing in that way. And I always looked up to her uh, for
Mhm.
being that vision. I always said when I grow up, I want to be like you, where I still have that essence, of a woman. Because, sometimes in life, we experience so many things, Alexia, that life can crush us. And, you go through so many
Yeah.
disappointments that you lose your life essence. And that diminishes you as a woman. And I was like, I don't want to be like that. I want to understand how to alchemize all of
Mm.
that energy so that I maintain my vibrance and my youthfulness, until as old as however many years I have to be on this planet. I want to maintain that. So I really look up to her. And then, of course, there are other, women that are, I think, big, that are um, celebrities that I kind of look up to, like Diane Carroll is one. She actually recently passed
Mhm.
away not too long ago. But Diane Carroll, I just loved her because she's just so feminine, and I loved her coyness, and I loved
Mhm.
how she was just so playful. Like she owned her sensuality. And I think for so many women, we run away from it because we want to be taken serious and we don't want to be seen as an object. And she embraced that. And she's like, no, I'm the one that's in control of my sensuality. And I
Yeah.
love when a woman
Yeah.
can own that essence and not allow anyone to objectify her because she has that essence, because she's in control. So I
Mm.
look up to those three women.
Mm.
Those are the three women that I think I look up to and that inspire me. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. You spoke a bit about your mother, and this is something that I'd like us to dive into is motherhood, because I've said this to you before. I'm not a parent, but I see someone like you who is a mother and who is so graceful and who makes it look so easy, and I know it's not. But talk to us a little bit about motherhood and how you've juggled motherhood and all these other dynamics that are happening in your life, and moving abroad with your daughter. Like it's quite a lot, and I think a lot of women can be intimidated by this idea of I'm a mother, I have this person I'm responsible for. How do I do these things in life and not feel, I don't know, scared to take risks, calculated risks, if you're a
Yes,
mother.
I. First of all, I appreciate that because you're probably like the fourth person in the past like 3 weeks that has said that to me, and so I glad that I make it look so easy. Really, I do.
You do.
I'm glad. Um,
You do.
my daughter is a young adult with disabilities, and she has cerebral palsy and she's autistic. She has a mild form of cerebral palsy and she's autistic. She got sick when she was, I want to say she was about 2 weeks old. And so I did not realize that she had a disability or cerebral palsy until a little bit later down the line. I want to say maybe she was around 7 or 8 months. And that's when I noticed she wasn't hitting some of her milestones. And I was like, okay, I think there's something wrong with my baby. So I went to take her in to get all the tests done, and they're like, okay, well, your daughter has cerebral palsy. And of course, the doctors always have to give the worst case prognosis, just, they have to give you the worst case prognosis. So just listen in and say, okay, well, your daughter's not going to be able to do this, this, trying to manage your expectations. And I just immediately
Yeah.
just trashed all of that. I said, you're not, you don't know what my daughter will be able to do. I don't know what my daughter will be able to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to treat my daughter like a normal person. I'm going to create the path of least resistance for her. I'm going to expose her to all the things that I would expose a typical, quote unquote, normal child to. And let's just see what happens. And, I think I
Yeah.
was very conscious in the sense of the things that I knew I wanted to instill in my daughter, which was healthy self esteem and self worth, um,
Mm.
speaking different languages, um, having the space to express her individuality and to express her gifts without judgment, and also to be able to give her a
Mm.
voice so that she could express her feelings and sentiments because I was not really given that space. Um, and so I started exposing my daughter to languages at a very early age, Spanish,
Mhm.
French, traveling. My ex husband is Puerto Rican, so she was always exposed to Spanish from a very young age. And we lived in Puerto Rico
Mm.
for, I want to say, about a year. But she always had like one of her nannies was from Peru, and so she's always had like a strong Spanish language foundation. But even now, she speaks conversational Japanese, and she speaks,
Incredible.
French and Italian at various different levels. Um, but I think the key to parenting, at least for me, is just embracing my daughter's individuality and understanding that
Mm.
it's not my job as a parent to control her or crush her. It's my job to uplift her purpose for being on the planet and her soul's reason for being here on the planet, and helping to maximize and facilitate that experience. That's my job as a parent. And understanding that assignment, I think, has, along with, um, just accepting my daughter for who she is and where she is in life, instead of what I wanted her to be or what I wished she could be or what I wished she could do, allowed me to release a lot
Mm.
of control. Because obviously, when you have a child that has a disability, a lot of your dreams, I think, as a parent can sometimes become crushed. And you start asking the questions like, well, God, why did you allow this to happen to me? Or,
Mm.
you know, you start listening to other people, or you start limiting what your child can be, or I've even seen some parents, because their children have disabilities, they don't even allow their children to experience the fullness of life because they want to keep them too safe or too boxed in, and
Yeah.
you just can't do that. So I think once I kind of release control and I just put away all the typical, life, goals and marks, and I just say, okay, this is my daughter. This is who she is.
Yeah.
Whenever she does XYZ is when she does it. And if she doesn't, that's fine too. And I think, like I said, releasing that control and just flowing has been the key to my success, because I'm able to quickly adapt and shift to whatever it is that he needs.
Mm.
Like I remember particularly when we were in Italy and she started experiencing a lot more behavioral issues, I was at a loss. I was like, oh my God, like what's going on? And I think a lot of times parents, we go into
Mhm.
panic mode and we start going into control mode, and why are you misbehaving? And why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And I said, hold on, wait. who's the parent and who's the child? I'm the parent.
Mm.
So let me calm down because she's going to feed off of my energy. So then I was like, let
Yeah.
me see what I can do to help this situation. So I started marking on a calendar when it was that she was having these issues of lashing out. I started talking to her. And soon I came to realize that right, I want to say during her luteal phase of her menstrual cycle, like right before her active menses, was when she was having these flare ups. And I was like, okay,
Mm.
she's really experienced a lot of hormonal changes due to her period. And I was like,
Yeah.
you know, instead of chastising her for this, let me see what I can do
Mm.
to help her through this journey. So then I started getting, different types of herbal teas to help her. I started lightening her load, her school lesson load. Like, okay, why don't you just go and
Mm.
rest, or let's do something creative like painting or drawing or something like that to help her. I also realized like my daughter is an empath, so she really takes on the energy of other people, and it's even heightened during her
Mm.
luteal phase. So I was like, maybe it's best not to have her out and about so much. We're in larger crowds during this time, so I just kind of have her either in smaller crowds
Mm.
or just to herself doing something creative during that time. And I noticed everything shifted when I did that. Everything shifted.
Amazing.
So I feel like as a
Yeah.
mother, my job is to facilitate a path of least resistance, a path of self discovery, and a path for soul elevation for my child. And however that's going to look for her being a person that is autistic and having cerebral
Mm.
palsy. Even it's kind of funny because even my daughter, she had been watching her typical friends have boyfriends and relationships. Like, I want a boyfriend. I want a
Mm.
boyfriend. I want to like nonstop. And if you know anything about autistic people, like they get fixated on something and they can't stop talking about
Mm.
it. So I actually went
Mm.
into a women's group in Rome and I said, does anyone know of anyone who has maybe a son who is autistic who would like to take my daughter out on a first date? And lo and behold, there was. And so
Oh,
so I was able to arrange my daughter's first date, and with this
that's
young
so
man
cute.
whose parents were expats living in Italy, and he took her out on their first date, and they ended up kind of like dating for like I want to say like 5 or 6 months. It was really cute, but
That's
um,
so cute.
just like I said, just helping her to have various experiences in life, and that's what I do, and that's what I love
Mm.
doing as a parent. And to
Mm.
see who she is, I mean, she's definitely a global citizen. She's definitely a child who understands how the flexibility that you have to have when you're crossing borders. She has that.
Yeah.
She knows the
Yeah.
drill. We're going somewhere new. She learns her phrases in whatever language we're going to, to the country that we're going to, how to ask for Wi-Fi, how to ask where the bathroom is, how to do all those things. She's super flexible. And I just love watching her thrive and blossom as a child who is, basically a third culture. I don't know, not necessarily a third culture kid, not by the technical sense, but definitely a child who is a global
Yeah.
citizen. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. It's such a breath of fresh air to hear a parent who understands that their kid is not necessarily an extension of
Yeah.
themselves, that their kid is their own individual on their own life
Right.
path. I think it's very refreshing because a lot of times, like I said, I'm not a parent and I can't imagine how difficult it is. But when I hear some people talk, it's like they almost put all of their personal expectations on
Right.
themselves a lot of times onto their kids. And it's really refreshing to hear someone who can see that, look, my life is my life and my child will have their own path and their own journey. I just need
Yeah,
to
I mean,
support
and
that.
sometimes, I mean, and like I said, it's been a journey because, you know, I didn't necessarily start out
Mm.
like that, but then when I started receiving some resistance, I had to accept the fact like my daughter has her own personality. especially when her personality
Mm.
really started coming out. And I'm like, she has her own
Mm.
personality, her own likes and dislikes.
Mm.
And I need to honor
Mm.
and respect that because, again, she's not, attached to me in that way, extension of me. She's her own individual person. And like I said, and helping her to blossom in that. But so many people lose sight of what the purpose of various interpersonal relationship dynamics are all about. And I think that's one reason why people have
Mm-hmm.
so many problems because they forget the parent child relationship is for this purpose and for this type of personal growth in your life. Like a
Yeah.
romantic relationship and marriage and partnership in that way is for a particular level of personal growth and soul growth in your life. They forget that. And that's
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest problems.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Candice, before we end off today, I'd like to hear. So we've heard about your journey, we've heard about the journey of her expat life. What does the future hold? What is the future looking like for yourself personally? Where are you heading? Any projects that you're busy with? And her expat life, what can people expect?
Sure. Well, I think personally, the journey that I'm on is definitely a different one because my mother passed away last year here in a simple
Mm.
turkey. And I think I'm just now really finding my footing as what I like to call like an adult orphan of sorts. And just really redefining where I'm going from this point forward and finding the confidence because your parents provide so much of a foundation for you, and when they're gone it's just like, oh wow, like I have to really be a big girl now. I have to be a big girl
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, finding, I've just been really taking the time to dive deep within myself to find that confidence and that surety that I will be okay and that I have learned enough to be okay in this world. Um, projects that I'm working on, there are some projects that I'm working on. I'm working on an app for persons with disabilities right now. So that's one
Mm.
project that I'm working on. And also, like I said, working on my book, my next book, which I won't say what it is just now, but it will definitely be a book on dating, love, and romance. I will say that much.
Okay.
And and I think just traveling again, like now that things feel a lot more normal, I wanted to travel because travel is so enriching, and I feel like I need to collect more experiences. So definitely going to be doing some more travel.
Mm.
As far as her expat life is concerned, um, where I see her expat life going is just being that go-to place for women who are, expats and digital nomads and want to advance their global lifestyle. Like we're going to be the go-to girls to come to for that. Helping right now, we have really unique memberships and packages that allow women to be able to create a life and find housing and community abroad, which is very important because you want to get yourself plugged in. So we have our co-work and play memberships that we have up, and then we're going to soon be launching our career coaching membership where you can find jobs on our jobs board, where you can speak with a recruiter or a headhunter to find very specific jobs or get some advice on how to transition from teacher to maybe a tech career, or just practice your interview skills or tweak your resume. So we have all of those things in the
Mhm.
pipeline. I think my biggest desire for her expat life is really truly to just help women to feel empowered no matter where they are on the globe, and to really get to put a footing, gain their footing as global citizens, start purchasing property abroad, which for me has been
Mhm.
an amazing journey, and honestly, like really helping me to sustain myself abroad. So, wanting to be that place where women can come and feel like they are supported in that way. And then we're also going to be launching on March 8th um, our Womb Storm. So, Womb Storm is going to be like a global think tank for women all over the
Mhm.
world, and where we come together, where we share ideas, where we talk about how we can be powerful and just create a network that works for us. Because I do feel like the world right now is in need of feminine leadership. I feel
Yeah.
like women are better together. And I feel that when we understand that we are better together, we don't have to compete. We don't have to, um, you know, be catty, but we can just all come together and share our unique ideas and gifts and elevate each other. So that's where I think Her Expat Life is definitely headed.
Mhm. Amazing, amazing. I'm so excited to see where things are going to be heading for you personally as well as for
Yes,
her expat life. Um, I have a good feeling. I have a good feeling that things are going to really expand this
absolutely.
year. Exciting things are going to
Absolutely.
happen. Candice, before we say goodbye, how can people get in touch with you if they want to reach
Of
out to
course,
you?
anyone who wants to reach out to me can easily find me send an inbox to or DM to on our Instagram account, Her Expat Life. Myself and two other people help manage that page, so I'm always checking the DMs there. You can also email me directly at CandiceSmith@herexpatlife.com. I can definitely answer your any emails that you have, and of course, visit our website, which is herexpatlife.com, and you can send a message directly from the website as well.
Thank you so much. Candice, what a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to chat to us today and to share your incredible, incredible life
Thank you
story.
so much. It was a pleasure. It was really fun.
And I hope and know that this is not the last time we're going to see you on the
Absolutely not.
channel. You're going to
Absolutely
be
not.
back.
I
You're
will
going to be
be
back.
very active on the channel, and you all have not heard the last of me.
Perfect. If you are watching this at home and you have enjoyed our content, please make sure to subscribe to our channel. Click on the notification bell so that you can stay updated and in touch with not only us, but also the latest information about things like digital nomad visas, things like buying property overseas, latest trends in the industry. Make sure that you stay connected to us and we will help you stay connected to the world. Thank you so much, Candice, and thank you to those at home. We will
You're
see you
welcome.
soon.
Bye.